Alright, so today we're going to be going into the second part of the shooting tutorial. Just real quick though, I realized that in one of my past videos I talked about vector math and I was completely off on how it works when they said, because I've always read documentation that says that they change it to the magnitude of 1, and then I just didn't know what they meant by magnitude of 1. And I was wondering about it because it didn't make any sense with the Pythagorean theorem or anything. So apparently what they do is they just take the length of the hypotenuse, or I think that's the right word, the big side of the right triangle, and they take that thing's length and they divide both the other sides, A and B side, by that number in order to get the relative size of the x and y to be equivalent to the hypotenuse being 1. Does that make sense? I hope it does. And this is like a really good example where it's 5 over here and they divide this number by 3 over 5 and this number by 4 out of 5. In that situation, actually I can just do it in my head. You get 0.6 and 0.8 for those two sides right there for your x and y. So x would be 0.8 and y would be 0.6 in this case right here. So just wanted to spell that out in case somebody was actually counting on my video having accurate information on vector math. I don't think anybody is, but just in case. Sorry about the misinformation, guys. Alright, so in the last video, we made it so that our bullets will fire off if we hit our fire button. So now in today's video, we're going to make it so those things don't just go on for an infinite amount of time. So in order to do that, we're going to have to talk about something called signals and something called timers. Both things built into Godot already, which is, by the way, the good part about Godot is that it has so much stuff built in right off the bat. But on the bad side, it makes it so that we have to learn a lot of things up front. So we're going to double click our bullet.tscn, our bullet scene, and then we're going to right click on bullet. We're going to add a new child node called timer onto it. Timer has the functionality of, well, running a timer and making something happen off of it. So if we go ahead and make the timer auto start, meaning that as soon as it starts up, it's going to run. And we only want to do like kind of a test run of like 0.5. That's a half a second. And something will happen off of there when the timer goes off. The problem is that there's no way for our bullet to know when this timer goes off. So if we click this node tab on top right, we can start talking about signals. We want this thing to emit a signal that it is done. And when it does that, it does this little method right here called timeout. Right? So if you look underneath timer, and by the way, these are each one of the parts of this node in here. This timer has a timer built in, a node, and an object all built into it. Go into timer and you double click timeout, it'll allow for you to add a method into bullet for it. Now you might not know what that means yet, but you will here in a second. So you'll see already it tells us, hey, we're going to make this method into node on timer timeout, and it's got bullet already selected on there, and we see that make functions on, meaning that it will add this function into bullet. So if we hit connect, you'll see that it opens up our script from bullet in here and it automatically makes this new function happen on here. So when the timer is done, when it goes off, this function right here will run. So if we erase this pass part right here, we can make something happen here. We just want to write in Q3 like so, and that'll make it so that the bullet disappears, which is what this little method right here does, this little function right here does. So if we now hit play, and I fire a bullet, you'll see it disappears after traveling a certain distance. Now, 0.5 might be too short, so let's do like 0.7 so it goes off that little screen right there. So we click back on timer, go back to inspector, and click back to like 0.7, which will be probably a bit of a better number. Alright, so we've got the timer built in, we've made a signal occur. I think that's pretty good for what I wanted to pull off right here, but there's still one piece of functionality missing from the bullet, and that's that the bullet doesn't actually collide with anything or make anything happen when it does collide. So in order to mess with this a little bit more, let's go ahead and turn back on that static body 2D that we had earlier inside of this game. You'll see that if we point our ship at it and start firing, our bullets are just going to go right through it. So we want it so that when the bullets go into it, something starts to happen on that little unit right there. Right now it's just a static body, so it's more of something that we can run into. And as you can see, it does have some substance to it, like this, but we're using an area 2D, which doesn't register the same way as the physics system does. Now, if you go over to your bullets again, and you look on the bullet itself, you'll see that inside the node tab over here, there's a bunch of signals that the area 2D will do. And you can see based on what they pass in on here, that they'll actually have different signals go off based on what it hits, right? So, for instance, if it hits another area, if this area hits another area, we'll be able to get access to that area. And if this hits a body, a physics body, then we'll actually get that too. So let's actually go with body entered, and we'll double click on this here. And again, we'll make another method for it, connect it on there, and we'll say if, and then we'll just do a quick test. If body equals body.name equals, and then we'll look at the name that we have on here. We'll change this name to simple so that we can just remember it real quick, because we're going to get rid of that eventually. We're going to go back to our script, and we'll say simple. Then we want to print something, the test worked, right? So we start firing over, and you see the test worked is going off. So now we've been able to figure out how to make it so that our bullets can actually register when they're hitting something. So instead of doing it like that, let's actually change this up and make it so that this will work similar to how an enemy will work. We're going to have two different types of things that bullets can hit. One is going to be like platforms like this, right? And the other, if we duplicate this, and then we're going to move this duplicated one, is going to be enemies, right? So we're going to make an enemy right here. And the thing is, we don't want to actually test their name every time, because we might have multiple enemies, so we don't want to test the name every single time. So we can get around this by making something called groups, and test the group instead of testing the name of the object, which is what we did last time. So let's actually make it so that our enemy looks a little bit different, so that we are not confused on what we're shooting inside the game, and to make sure that we're doing this correctly. So if we go over to the sprite, and we go over to the visibility, and we switch modulate to this reddish color, like so. See that the red is inside the logo itself now, so that'll help us to figure out what exactly we're shooting and which one is which. So if we go back into here, and then we click back on node again, and we click groups instead of the signals over here on the top, we can add a different group inside this game. And let's add a group called obstacle, and click add, and that'll put him in the obstacle group. And then we're also going to do enemy on the enemy by clicking on the enemy, going to groups, and clicking right in an enemy and hitting add. At any point now, we can go to manage groups. We can click on each one of the groups, and you can see that each one has a different grouping. You can see like what nodes are in each one of these groups and that they match up. You want to make sure that you don't have like enemy and enemies and enemies 3 and too many different enemy groups if you want them all to have the same grouping, right? And that'll allow us to differentiate which objects we are shooting at. So, which is good. We want to know. We want to be conscientious about what we're shooting. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to say if we just simply write in group, you'll see that a bunch of different functions come in here. And before I typed in group, I couldn't remember what function it was. So this is just kind of an example, guys, of how this like autofill works. And you see is in group is in here. So you can check to see if that body is in group, right? And we see over here that is in group exists, but I can't remember what we're supposed to feed into it and how we're supposed to use it, and it's probably doing it based off this object. So let's actually write in body dot is in group, and I'm guessing it takes in a string, I'm guessing, but again, we don't have to guess because we can just simply go is in group, type it in there, and let's see, it'll test to see if you're inside the string group. Okay, so we're going to go back to the bullet, we're going to type in our string here, and we're going to test to see if it's inside of obstacle, body.isInGroup, obstacle. Then we hit enter, we have another indent on here, which means that if this is true, everything that's indented in here is going to happen when the onBullet body entered happens. So what's happening here is this function is seeing what it only happens when the signal goes off that it hit something, and that signal will actually tell us what it hits. And then we'll see if that is an obstacle. If it's an obstacle, we want to destroy the bullet that we currently are. So we just run the queue free function. And then we're going to make something that you guys haven't heard of yet if you're new to programming. That's an elif statement. An elif statement will do a next if this one's not true. So if this is false, then elif stands for else if, and this will run this check if this is false. So if it's not an obstacle, then we're going to check if that's an enemy, right? And then we still want to destroy the object that we are inside of at that point. In other words, we want to still get rid of this bullet. But we also want the enemy get destroyed. To do that, we're going to do body.queue_free, right? And that should be everything that we want to run on this. So let's hit play and see what happens. We're going to shoot the obstacle, and as you can see, we're shooting it, and our bullets are just vanishing into thin air because they're hitting that. But if I hit the enemy, he dies. He vanishes in a not fun manner. He just goes. It's not even flashy at all. Anyway, I think that's all we really need to do for this video. We've built in bullets. We've really worked with signals to make our bullets have some functionality to them. So in the next video, we'll start talking about, well, making it a little bit flashier, making enemies, and then we're going to need to go into AI and make it so that the enemies can attack us back, shoot us with bullets. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So anyways, guys, hope you guys all have a great day. Thank you for hanging out with me. Please like, subscribe, comment. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.